something of grave concern. And today we have picked up this subject of, uh, you know, uh, this lethal obsession. And, just looking at almost every other day, there is an incident of a girl being killed, stabbed or in some way attacked. And this whole thing about rejection is not something that goes down well with a lot of men and youngsters. And we are going to look at this serious topic, which is actually costing people their lives. And we are so glad and thankful to God we have three esteemed panelists in the midst of us. So what we'll be doing is we'll be speaking for a length of time, after which we will go into a time of Q&A. Kindly hold on to your questions. And as you're listening, if at that moment you feel like asking a question, you could immediately put it on the chat and we'll pick it up later. Yeah. So just a bit about our panelists. We have Dr. Jamila Koshi, who's a psychiatrist by practice, and she graduated from the Armed Forces Medical College, Pune, and completed her postgraduate studies in psychological medicine from the University of Mumbai, and she has served in the Indian Army, and she has written several books and journals on topics that are really that affect people's lives, and we are very thankful that she's in the midst of us. We have Advocate Beulah Jemima, who's a law practitioner with about 3 decades of experience in litigation, and she's a certified mediator and a law teacher. Yeah. And we also have, last but not the least, former Director General of Police Tamil Nadu, Dr. Pradeep V. Philip, doctors for doctorate in management. He's also the founder of a new approach to psychology. He's the founder of a new approach to psychology called equilibrium psychology. Uh, it is basically the thought process preceding, accompanying, succeeding a decision and an action or a reaction determines the impact or consequence of that decision action. Okay, basically it goes like this. What is a thought process preceding, accompanying, succeeding a decision and action or a reaction determines the impact or consequences of that decision, action, or reaction. So if the thought process is either negative or reactionary or overtly positive, the result cannot be conducive or efficacious. So equilibrium psychology shapes and directs a very robust approach to life and business. It is neither optimistic nor pessimistic, but it is realistic and forward-looking. So again, welcoming all of you, and a big thanks to our panelists who are here. So we'll begin with each of our panelists will speak for a length of time, 10 to 15 minutes each, and then we will have a time of discussion. So we'll start with Dr. Jamila Koshi, then followed by Advocate Beulah, and then Dr. Pradeep. Yeah. So over to Dr. Jamila. Welcome, Doctor.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Abhijit, and I'm very happy to be here at NBF Coffee Chats. Yeah, so the topic that you picked up today on this obsessions, in a milder form, this is the problem of stalking, right? And what is stalking? Stalking is a repetitive behavior directed at a specific person, which causes fear, right? That's the general picture of stalking. And sometimes, as noted in the various examples which Abhijit put on our poster, this turns very malignant and violent and often fatal. So people can throw acid on someone or stab someone to death or burn them to death. Unfortunately, in our country, all sorts of things can happen. So we need to understand what is going on here. These are very disturbing reports when we read it in the paper, right? That somebody followed a woman and stabbed her to death, or uh, burnt her alive, or threw acid, or whatever the story goes. They're very disturbing reports. And we wonder what is going on. So let's look at it we're going to look at it in three ways, as Abhijit said, and I'm going to give the psychological point of view, and I'm sure Beulah and Pratik will give the legal and the police aspects of it as well. So psychologically speaking, what is happening here, right? You have to try and understand that. So usually what happens is that such people, psychologically speaking, they have a great focus on themselves. It's a very self-centered kind of way of looking at life. And in that self-centeredness, the inability to take rejection is a very prominent part, right? So in most of these stories, you'll find that the whole need to stalk someone, or the whole need to intimidate them, or the whole need to even take that final course of killing them is because the other may have rejected you, refused their advances, or had a brief affair and then broken it off, or whatever it is. That's how the story usually goes. So there is an inability to take rejection, which is very core to these people. And along with that, there is this whole uh, jealousy aspect. Okay, they are never secure in their affections. They're never confident that the other person will be with them, or whatever, that they will treat them well, or something like that. So often the stalkers are following to check that they are not doing something, talking to someone else, not doing this, not doing that. So there is a need for assurance, a need to keep checking and following and being in that person's vicinity to know what is happening to them. And that also leads to the next facet, which is that sense of possessiveness. They want to own this person. Okay, so that person is mine. I have the right to do with this person what I want, because this person belongs to me. Okay, so there is this very a very toxic kind of possessiveness which treats the other person almost like an object. So they are not granting any humanity or choice or respecting the other's decision in any way. You have to do what I have said, right? You belong to me. And if you don't want to be with me, then I will not let anyone else have you. So there's this very toxic possessiveness, which is part of it. Okay, two more things which we can look at, which is these people often are unable to express their emotions or regulate their emotions or even understand their emotions in a proper way. So there's a severe emotional dysregulation here. Sometimes it may be this very, very profound jealousy. Sometimes this jealousy may lead to a very blinding rage. So if I'm refused, the rage knows no bounds. I cannot tolerate. I will not tolerate. So the anger is completely out of proportion to anything that has happened. A blinding kind of rage takes over. Along with that, there is this numbness to other people's feelings. So what the other is feeling, is the other feeling scared, or are they put off by me, or are they uncomfortable in my presence? There is a complete indifference to the other person's feelings, thoughts, even their own humanity. Okay, so there is this strange kind of emotional dysfunctionality in the emotional realm. Of course, the bulk of the stalkers tend to be men, and the bulk of the victims are women. Though, of course, men can also be stalked and women also stalk. Okay, it might be, the figures may be tilting more in the direction of women being the victims, but men can also be stalked. But basically, often there is, when the men are the stalkers, there is an element of patriarchy also coming in here. The male understanding that I am a man, I have the right to expect you to submit to me. I have made an approach to you. How dare you refuse me? Okay, so there is this understanding of masculine entitlement, which is part of it. And along with that, there is this very, again, negative version of masculinity, where masculinity is seen as doing something, taking action against someone who doesn't listen to you or submit to you or anything like that, being violent in a very strong way. So it's almost seen as if this is the right thing to do, and this is a heroic thing to do, to end the person who is questioning me or not submitting me to me or something like that. There is a different kind of stalking sometimes, which is seen by people with autism spectrum disorder, where there is poor social skills. Okay, they are not able to read social cues. They're not able to sense when someone is disinterested or a little scornful or just not interested in you romantically. So this also sometimes in milder forms, stalkers can have this kind of problem as well. Okay, now these are the psychological points of view, but often a lot of these congregate together and they can actually be as severe as mental illnesses. Okay. And often the kind of cases which Abhijit put up on the poster, the severe cases, will have some kind of mental illness associated. So studies have shown that up to 20% to up to, in some cases, 50% of such violent stalkers have some kind of mental illness. There are different forms of it. Personality disorders are very common, all right, particularly cluster B personality disorders, for instance, antisocial personality disorder, where this whole numbness to others' feelings, where this complete, cruelty, where there is a superficial charm, but you are completely amoral, you're not bothered about social mores or laws or anything like that, and you're able to completely overlook all that when it comes to your own feelings, your own desires, your own whatever sense of entitlement. Okay, so antisocial people can sometimes end up doing this. Paranoid people who are largely suspicious, as I said, sometimes jealousy is part of it. Sometimes it becomes a very malignant paranoia, right? We are completely suspicious of the other person. So you have people who have, for instance, been divorced, exes, things like that, who are very suspicious of their ex, and they follow them and they check on them, and they say, okay, she's sleeping with another man, she's doing this, she's doing that, and it ends up in this kind of violent action. Another kind of mental disorder which sometimes is seen is what we call delusional disorder, where there is this fixed delusion. It could be either about suspicion, but sometimes, interestingly, it may also be that a delusion of love, where the person thinks that this other person is in love with me. And it's a fixed thought. It can't be changed. It may be completely without any basis. It may be often a person finding someone of higher status, of somebody of maybe in a prominent position, a star or cricketer or somebody like that. They feel that this person is in love with me, and they follow them, and they create stories in their own mind about how this person is sending signals to me, doing this, doing that. And this kind of thing can also end up in a lot of violence and sometimes these kind of crimes. All right, let me briefly and quickly just mention how you can prevent this kind of thing from happening. Now, in order to prevent this, we need to first understand this, right? We need to understand that it is important to teach young men in particular about healthy masculinity. Okay, we need to teach about healthy personhood first, that we are persons and we respect other people's personhood. We respect other people's rights to say no. We respect other people's bodies and we do not touch them or harm them in any way, right? And we respect the laws of the land. We do not feel that we are entitled to special treatment or suspension of laws because I am upset, I can do this. So this kind of healthy personhood, seeing yourself as a citizen, one among many with equal rights, but others also have equal rights. This kind of teaching of healthy masculinity and healthy personhood has to be taught. And often we ignore this, we don't teach this. And the role of parents and religion is very important here in teaching all these things, okay? And particularly for young men, to learn that their strength, often you'd see that they stabbing, killing, strangling, all these things, it requires a lot of physical strength, right? Now, to teach young boys and young men that using your strength only for good, never to harm others, that your strength is great. It's a gift and it's something which you can take delight and joy in, but use it for good. Use it for the good of society. Don't use it for harm, and respect other people's choices, including those who are weaker than you, like women or younger girls or whatever it is. Okay. The second thing we can do to prevent this is to increase the emotional intelligence of the general population. Okay. When I say that, what I mean is we need to teach young people to understand their own emotions. Why am I feeling this way? I'm jealous. What am I jealous about? Am I right to feel jealous like this? So talking about emotions and helping to process and understand emotions. Okay, I'm feeling angry. Why am I feeling angry? This is why I'm feeling angry. All right, am I justified in feeling angry? This is why this person said this. So just processing and thinking through and talking this through with someone will help us to understand and process our emotions. And then to express them rightly, right? So anger, for instance, we allow our children to, if we allow our children to hit each other, to be violent all the time, to speak back to parents, to hit teachers, or fight, without any control on the playground, if we don't teach them that, look, we have to regulate our expression of anger. Anger is dealt with by talking with the other person. You do not have to get physically violent. You do not have to try and prove your point by who is, got bigger muscles than the other one, or who is able to beat up the other one. So teaching this is very important, and it's often neglected. Who teaches this? Do parents teach this? Do schools teach this? We need to think that this has to happen. Finally, there has to be a greater awareness of mental illness. We in our country have a huge treatment deficit. Okay, treatment deficit for the kind of disorders that I mentioned is up to 80 to 90%. 80 to 90% of these things are not treated. And it is my firm conviction, for instance, that a lot of people who end up in the courts, taking people to, court, suing them for this or that, many of them are actually paranoid people. They are suspicious and distrustful. If they had got themselves treated, they would probably not have had to go to court. Similarly, if you help to treat these things early, we would not perhaps have these violent crimes, if we are able to detect these things early. So greater awareness of mental disorders, so that other people can pick up that, okay, listen, guy, you're getting too violent. You have to go and do something about your anger. We have to, get you into a program for dealing with your anger, figuring out why it's happening, things like that. So that's what I wanted to say. The psychological issues, the presence in at least 20 to 50% of severe cases of mental illness, okay, clear-cut mental illness, and also the need to prevent this by teaching good personhood traits, by teaching how to handle and increase one's emotional intelligence in dealing with people, and finally having awareness of mental illness in the general public. Thank you, Abhijit.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jamila, and now for your wonderful talk. And now over to Advocate Beulah. Yeah, welcome, Advocate Beulah. Yeah.
Hello to all of you all. And firstly, I'm very happy to be here, and I thank Pastor Abhijit for giving me this opportunity once again. Dr. Jamila had beautifully spoken about the psychological aspect of stalking. Now, to give you a little about the legal perspective and the legal aspect of it. So before, there was no particular section about stalking in India, the criminal procedure code. It was only after the criminal laws were amended in 2013 is section 354D was introduced, which addressed stalking. Before that, it was covered under section 354, which was sexual harassment like voyeurism, and causing and section 509, which talked about gestures, sexual gestures or words where the modesty of a woman is affected, and all of this. But it was only in 2013 there was a need, and then the 354A, B, C, D came. Today we are, of course, talking about stalking as such. So 354D, that is of the Indian Penal Code, it defines stalking as a man who follows a woman. So here, please remember this particular section is very gender biased. It's only, though Dr. Jamila was telling that though men also are victims, but here it is only for the women. So stalking means a man who follows a woman, or he contacts a woman or attempts to contact. So it's either he's following, or he's trying to attempt, or he's contacting a woman so as to intrude into her personal space, like without a clear indication of any kind of an interest. So there's a disinterest. So to repeatedly foster interaction with the women, or trying to persistently pursue her. So this is what it means to say is what stalking is defined as. So though there is the woman either rejects it or clearly indicates that she is not interested in his pursuing all of that, despite which a man does it. And this is one. And this is all. And the third part of the section talks about cyber stalking. Like it says, which monitors the use of internet by women, like through email, electronic communication, or some kind of WhatsApp message, whatever it is, so as to commit the offense of stalking. So all this come under the definition of what stalking is. So, but of course, there is also an exception to this. But if this is done for either by a police officer or somebody, a detective, to stalk and to detect a crime, or suppose he, as a person or individual, is entrusted with that, responsibility of detecting a crime, and he's pursued for that. Or maybe sometimes journalists, they also want to follow and take pictures to be able to produce it in the media, that maybe those do not fall under the heading of stalking as such. Okay, their conduct, of course, they need to prove that their conduct is justified and why they were doing it, or have they been given that responsibility under any law to comply with any condition. That has to be told. So stalking, as was already told you, it can manifest itself in various forms, such as cyber stalking, physical stalking, or surveillance, like having some kind of a camera put, and or it can be even through the mobile telephonic stalking. All this fall under stalking. That's not only it's covered under IPC, but also under the Information Technology Act when it comes to cyber stalking. And so, there cannot be any particular mode. Besides, stalking is also added as an offense in other. Suppose, let's say it's a rape, or it's an offense of murder. So the person is 354D is in the charge sheet and the FIR 354D, because it starts with stalking many times. So following the girl, persistently pursuing the girl, or even sending unwanted filthy letters or phone calls, or trying to communicate forcefully, taking photographs, especially, as I said, voyeurism, like nude pictures of some intimate scene or something like that, and abusing and using nude language or nudity, and threatening to physical assault, criminal intimidation, intimidating them to these sexual gestures, or threatening to sexually assault, or trying to uh, spread rumors about character, or body shaming in some kind of a group or something through social media, through different apps. All this come under all of this can come under this particular section 354D. And cyber stalking is with 66A of the Information Technology Act, where it says any kind of offensive messages, like even if you're in an office group or something, and some kind of an offensive message is sent by a worker. I think we already had one session on prevention of sexual harassment of women at workplace, So those, that also this, it also covers this, like where offensive messages are sent, and through any kind of an electronic device, like a computer or any communication device. And if it is just to cause some kind of an annoyance, some kind of an insult or injury or criminal intimidation, or persistently pursuing hatred, enmity, using filthy language, cuss language, words, all of this. So all of this is covered under Section 66 of the IT Act, which also will include section. This is also a form of cyber stalking, right? And again, causing inconvenience or misleading the addressee about the origin of the message, so all that also. So this all attracts the cyber stalking, what I was talking about, which is covered in 66A section of the Information Technology Act, and Section 67 of the Act. The punishment which is for these offenses which can extend to 3 years also, and with fine. So any kind of an obscene material in electronic form, or which is nude, or it appeals to unhealthy interest, but especially depraved and corrupt persons, with kind of a depraved language use, whether you see it, even pictures for that matter. So all this is termed as cyber stalking, and as punishment will be for either 3 years, and the fine could be up to 5 lakhs. So usually in the first, if it's a repetitive offense, then the imprisonment is more. If it's a second time repetition, then it could be 5 years, and the fine can be even almost, it can go up to 10 lakhs. That's what the Act prescribes. So here, these messages, say, so even somebody can unknowingly, can send some kind of, like, suppose you're in a working group, or you could be colleagues, or you could be friends, and some kind of a dirty, obscene message is sent. It still attracts the section if the person to whom it is sent decides to go, right? So, so any kind of material that contains sexually explicit messages or pictures, or even depicting children in a sexual explicit manner, all this comes under section 67A, 67B also, where it says any kind of um, such kind of offense, like where the sexually explicit and lewd messages are sent through electronic means of communication, they also fall under cyber stalking, and it can 5 years, as I said, 3 years to 5 lakhs, 5 years to 10 lakhs. This is what it is. The 7 years also it met, depending on what the messages, to whom it was sent, and all of that. Now, this is in the IT Act. I'm talking about the Information Technology Act. Now, coming back to the Indian Penal Code, section, as I already told you, that before the Criminal Act, Criminal Procedure Code could be amended, that's before 2013, this did not specifically spell out all these offenses. It was just sexual harassment and included voyeurism, and all this also came under section 354. After the act was amended, 354A. So 354A talked about any kind of an unwelcomed physical contact. It can be a pornography, and all these is against the woman's will. So where the person, that is the perpetrator, can prove that it was consensual, then it would not attract that section. So it should be shown that these kind of offenses were committed against the woman's will, and sexually colored remarks and all of that. So section 354A dealt with all these kind of sexual harassment offenses. And before, even if it fell under 354A, most of this was first, accompanied by stalking. So they stalk a person, pursue a person, send these messages. So 354D is attracted. Okay. So sexual harassment cases itself begin by stalking the other person. Then coming to section 354B of the Indian Penal Code, then this also addresses the use of, intending to disrobe the person, or using sexual force to satisfy their sexual desires or some kind, or, where there's some kind of humiliation caused. All this came under section 354B. This basically addressed intention to disrobe a woman. So which again in 509 talks about outraging the modesty of. I'm just telling you what are these sections and what are these offenses which will fall under these sections. And 354C specifically included voyeurism. So as you know, voyeurism means capturing some kind of image of a person who's engaged in a private act without their consent. So even if it's a consensual act which they're performing, but if this is captured either in a through a video, or through a photograph, and it is circulated, or if it is not circulated also, this falls under voyeurism under section 354C of the Indian Penal Code. So, and even if they disseminate such messages, or disseminate such recordings, all of this. So again, this is accompanied by 354D because it is intruding into someone's privacy. So if it's intruding into someone's privacy, it is again comes under stalking. So all of these sections are read with, in which the police would file the FIR, where 354D and section 354A and C and all of that would be included. So this is that series of 354A, B, C, D, while D specifically talks about stalking. Now, coming to section 292 of the Indian Penal Code, this relates to obscenity. So this may not be directly linked to stalking, but it can be applicable if the stalker uses obscene materials, obscene communications, or intimidates the victim, by sending all kinds of messages like through social. Now, most like if you see now today's generation, children and we are all exposed to so much of social media through YouTube and WhatsApp and Twitter and all of those. So these kind of obscene materials and communications, and just to intimidate or to character assassinate the person or to just stalk, or as Dr. Jamila was talking about, how they do it, because they are interested or some kind of an obsession. But it also, in addition to that, it's also their depraved minds, which by this, it causes a lot of threat to the safety and the security of the victim. So these kind of messages, which are obscene messages, are sent through social networking sites or through emails or through text messages. All this also 292 talks about obscenity, but it is again read with section 354D because these kind of obscene messages and photographs are sent. And the other section is 506. Now, 506 is also relevant in cases because stalkers usually use threats and intimidating behavior. So first they instill fear, then they try to pursue this, and start following the victim, and then they try to exert control. So what happens is there is criminal intimidation, right? So this is also this is also accompanied with section 354D because all this is used, which stalkers use before, by criminally intimidating, and they use threats so that the victim is, they get the victim for their own reasons. And again, 509 also talks about the outraging the modesty of women. And this is also by using words, by following, by using gestures, by using doing some acts, which is, totally unhealthy, and which insults the modesty and the dignity of women. That is also covered under section for voyeurism. And IT Act, again, through the internet, 66E also talks about voyeurism and all. So all these sections talk about stalking, and it deals with stalking. But before stalking, all these other sections are also where stalking is also included in it. So this, how do we prioritize the personal safety? As I told you, this is only for women can take these sections, can get parasol under these sections. It's not men. So, you may tell, yeah, it's mostly women who are affected. But how do you, when somebody does that legally, like what do you do? What kind of precaution? You may not be able to prevent, but what can you do to, get that person under the law and to get him, get these offenses put against him or an FIR registered against him? So you will have to document it. Either you're recording that, you're keep whatever has been sent to you, you are holding that, not deleting it. But it could be obscene letters or messages or photographs. You have that with you. Do not delete it, because you need this to prove it to the police. When you go and file a complaint in the jurisdictional police, you need to show that. Then and it's not that any person should not just ignore it, because this may continue, and this may cause some kind of a threat to the safety of the person. So it's better to inform your close circle, like family or friends or relatives or colleagues, that this is happening to you. Because sometimes it like we have not sometimes all the cases that were the incidents that were put on this on whatever was published, like for today's chat, it still showed that these kind of offenses are taking place, and it says that almost there is one happening, one stalking, one offense against a woman is being done every 30 minutes in India. There is some kind of an offense happening. It is the statistics told, and I don't think that is right, because it can be more can be happening. So informing trusted individuals is very important, and of course, immediately with what you have collected, whatever document you've collected, without deleting, you have that and inform, and then immediately contact the police and provide them with all these materials of all the incidents that has taken place, whether it's being repeated or it was the first one-off incident. And do not wait for a repetition, but I think you'll have to immediately reply, or if it's something to do to the cyber, then you have to report to the cyber police or the cyber cell. Online complaints can be filed, and more light will be thrown on that from Dr. Pradeep, who's going to speak after me. And sometimes, there could be a situation where the stalker is just following, just following, not doing anything, just following. But that itself is kind of intimidating. That itself kind of instills fear in the victim. So what you can do is you can even get a restraining order from the court, which is a civil restraining order, saying that, of course, lawyers would advise you on that, saying that this person should not come anywhere near, because he's he's stalking you from a long time. It could be some people even stalk for months and years together. Always you come out, you see this person waiting and all of that. That itself kind of instills fear and insecurity and some kind of anxiety. All of that happens. So then in those instances, you'll have to keep a record of those incidents which are happening, the dates, the times, at what time, and description, so that when you give a totally clear picture of what is taking place, the police will be able to help you and can, trace the perpetrator. So screenshots, copies, all of this, so that you can, address these kind of things. And there have been many legal cases, especially there was this, the first thing in 1997 when Vishaka was the state of Rajasthan, which was where a lady who was working for the rural development program of Rajasthan was raped by, she was gang raped. And then those people got scot-free because they had some kind of a political influence. But the Supreme Court in that, it discussed all the rules and guidelines. And that's how finally in 2013, the Prevention of Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act came into force. So there are, see, this is actually all these kind of stalking or violating a woman's dignity. All this is depriving your fundamental right. Under 21, right to liberty, right to life, and right to freedom. All this is being violated. Okay, so there's another important case, which is the Inspector General of Police versus Samuthiram in 1999, where in 2012 the Supreme Court passed a judgment where it laid down guidelines. So where police officers in civil clothes can be put in. Should be there in bus stands, in public places, and in railway stations, educational institutions. There should be CCTVs in cinema theaters, because these eve teasing, to curb eve teasing. So they laid down a set of guidelines in this particular case, the Supreme Court. So that way, where eve teasing was done, eve teasing again, stalking comes into picture. They kind of stalk the person, they tease the person, they use force or molest or do all of that. So these kind of guidelines were laid down in that case, where at least 8 guidelines were laid down, where CCTV should be put, police should be put in these places, public places. So, and in college institutions where it's a girls' college, you'll find a lot of these people standing, many boys or young students standing there, teasing, stalking, all of that. So, this was told in those guidelines. So again, another famous case was the Priya Madhu case, okay, where the son of a former IPS officer, he raped this girl and he murdered her at a house when no one was there. He stalked her for some time. So this was a very famous case. When she was alone at home, he stalked her for a few days, and after that he went into a home when no one was there, and she was raped and she was killed also. And thereafter, and he was the son of a former IPS officer as well, the perpetrator. And yes, thereafter CBI inquiry and all of that, and finally a death penalty was given to him, which later the Supreme Court turned it into a life imprisonment. So this stalking cannot be taken lightly, because it can be the beginning of a worser thing, because you just don't. So don't, you have to lodge an FIR directly. You have to make a written complaint and do this so that, redressal to the victims can come soon. And uh, uh, especially where, because these people are usually habitual. Like, so if it's the first time, they could have done that to many more. So, and this has become very common these days. But many of the uh, girls or young teenagers or women, they just don't want to go and tell it out to anybody. But I think it should be told so that they, prevent from a greater uh, uh, thing happening later on, which can be a real danger and threat to their life. So this is, of course, there have been but if you look at the legal part of it, there has not been many conviction, because later on they don't come to give, these victims don't come and give, evidence in the court. And so conviction rate is low, because they just don't want to keep coming to the court and going through all this. They feel that the ignominy of trial, they just don't want to face. So conviction rates are low. But if you collect proper evidence and you're able to, then the police will be able to file a charge sheet and go on this. And besides that, this offense, as I told you, 3 years to 5 years. Second offense will be 5 years. There is fine as well. And this is a bailable offense, but it is a cognizable offense, and it is a non-compound. Cognizable is the police can arrest without a warrant, without getting to direction to investigate. Without that, they can. And also, it's non-compoundable. You cannot just go compound it, understand. So sometimes, people are not filing because there's pressure also. They're very, very scared to take any action. But I think it should not be taken lightly, and approaching the legal and the lawyer and the police is very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Arutula. Yeah. Now over to Dr. Prateek here. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Abhijit, for this inviting me to this panel. I think both the panelists preceding me, Dr. Jamila and Advocate Yula, have covered extensively the definition that stalking is an intrusive and threatening behavior, the types of stalkers, their psychiatric makeup, and what motivates them, as well as the deterrent provisions of the law and how it is defined in the law in the section added in 2013, the IPC, which is 354D, which criminalizes all such acts. And stalking is defined in 354D as any man who follows a woman and contacts or attempts to contact such women to foster interaction repeatedly despite a clear indication of disinterest by such women, or two, monitors the use by the woman of the internet, email, or any other form of electronic communication, thereby commits the offense of stalking. So stalking in our society for a long while was minimized, and people just took it as a kind of eve teasing. But following the watershed events of 2013 of rape and murder of an innocent girl, and the Justice Verma Committee took it up, and they studied all the provisions of law and the need to create deterrence in law. After that, stalking has been treated as a serious offense. But despite that, the prevalence of stalking in a country as large as India, as Advocate Beulah said, it is almost one every hour or more. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, because the majority of cases are not reported either by the victim or by the family for reasons of stigma or the prestige attached or the fear of public opinion or the fear of attracting further retaliation from the perpetrators. So, but if victims follow a policy of zero tolerance, then we would see that it does not escalate into more serious crimes like rape and murder, like the Priya Mattu case which was mentioned, which is again another watershed case which awakened the conscience of the country itself. So basically, the personal boundaries of a person cannot be violated. Privacy is sacrosanct. The right to privacy is part of the right to life and liberty. And judgments have been passed periodically to strengthen this right to privacy. And anyone trying to infringe on this right to liberty, right to privacy, the severest punishment is meted out in law. But what should victims do? What should potential victims do? Why has Abhijit thought of this topic? Because a lot of people are indignant of what is happening in the country, that a jilted lover murders the girl, the woman. And similarly, there are so many cases of acid being thrown after the perpetrator stalks the victim for some time and does not receive any reciprocation of his professed affection for the victim. And so the zero tolerance policy, which was first introduced in UK, with if you not tolerate any minor, even minor or any attempt, even the very first attempt at stalking, that would have greatest deterrence in our society. And whether it's electronic stalking or whether it is physical stalking, and whether the motivation is because the stalker is rejected by the person, the victim, or whether it's a resentful stalker. A resentful stalker is a person who might have had a personal relationship with the victim, but at a certain stage they break off. And I've come across cases where the resentful stalker then murders the former friend or person whom he had a relationship with. Now, we have talked only about individual stalkers, but there are cases where mob mentality, you'll have a group of people stalking people of, maybe a weaker community in rural areas. We get this stalking not only in urban context, but also in rural context. You'll find young women being stalked and by people of the majority community or whatever dominant group, and then you'll find the news that the victim has been found dead in a field. So all these cases sear the conscience of the country, and the police are directed to give the maximum attention to any victim's complaint. And unlike other crimes, the onus is upon the perpetrator to prove his innocence. That means it is not like other laws where innocence is presumed and the guilt has to be proved. When the victim is able to document, as rightly pointed out by Advocate Dula, that important thing is we must document any attempt to physically stalk. Even if you just take your phone, mobile phone, and do a Facebook Live of somebody trying to harass you, then that itself will have a deterrence. And you can even get help from passers-by. So these common sense methods should be used. Also, women should be, I think, also have their own defense mechanisms, kind of mental, the verbal cues that they use. I once came across a US Marine who's a woman who said that she's trained in mental judo. That is just, you don't even have to speak. The way you appear, that itself puts off any person trying to intimidate you, any person trying to harass you. So training, apart from training young men, mentioned rightly by Dr. Jamila, to be better humans who would come to the protection of women rather than harass them. Another aspect is we could train our women in basic self-defense, in this kind of mental judo, and where their body language itself would deter anybody, that they better not mess with them. So our schools and colleges, both genders have to be better educated. It begins in the home, where the mother and father should need to inculcate in children that if you're a brother, look after not just your sister, but all other women, look upon them as your sisters, and go to the help of people. In this context, there's I Am Safe app that I think you're going to have a small introduction on that app. This kind of technology-driven methods will be helpful, particularly when the perpetrators are using technology. I came across recently, an entire family came to meet me and they were under distress. And they said that, see, a certain boy, known to us not very well, but we knew him, he started stalking our daughter. And she resisted, but at a particular point, she just stopped. After that, this guy even brought friends and surrounded her in school, and also started spying on the family from nearby properties. So I advised them that you must immediately go to the local inspector. I put a word to the inspector and see that, the family, not just that perpetrator, but the family should be called. And get it in writing that they dare not attempt to continue this kind of misbehavior and criminal behavior, in fact. So many families, they don't want it to pursue it to the stage that it becomes an FIR. If they can help it, they would like it to be treated as a petition. So that aspect in our society, we tend to be wary of, going to the court. So that reluctance of victims also to make a very, vivid complaint with all the documentation, with photographs, with screenshots. If it is electronic surveillance by some accused, they should maintain, a record of screenshots of people trying to follow them on social media, or harass them, or troll them, or pass sexually explicit material to them on social media or WhatsApp, or follow them even on telephone calls. If you're continually tracking a person, that amounts to the electronic form of stalking. And all the provisions of 354 A to D, as well as 66E of the IT Act, read with 292 IPC, as well as 354, 506, 509. All these are deterrent provisions. But there is a need for the victim to step up and give evidence right at the beginning, as soon as it happens, and also to pursue the matter till it reaches its logical end in a conviction. As mentioned, the conviction rate in these cases is very low. That itself, encourages the perpetrators to continue with such criminal behavior. So there is a need for, changing the mindset of the Indian people, especially the younger elements. You won't find, very rarely you'll find a middle-aged person. It is the profile of people who are stalkers are mostly teenagers to 20s, or maybe even 30s. And so that is the group of, the people that society needs to focus on to create deterrence. And the victims also tend to be from teenage to 20s or 30s. You won't find middle-aged women normally complaining. So there may be exceptional cases. So there is a need of a slew of measures of creating awareness like we are doing now through this online session, creating awareness about the law. So even if the person has a tendency, when he's aware that there are such serious laws, that they could end up in jail for 5 years on a repeat offense. 5 years is given for a repeat offense. Or if there's even an attempt is made to show explicit pornography to a classmate, that would, land them in a lot of trouble with the law. So the documentation is very important. Then trusting in a family member and confiding in a family member, a parent, and not just your sibling who may not know what to do, but in trusting in the parents, in confiding them at the earliest point in time. Sometimes you're embarrassed to tell. The victim is embarrassed to tell even the parents, and try to minimize it and say, okay, this happens in schools and colleges. But we have seen the history, how it escalates if it is ignored. And if you do not complain, the perpetrator gets emboldened and even feels that out of his own sense of, narcissism, he may even begin to think that it is actually appreciated by the victim, and that he would continue with such behavior. So with all these measures, we can see that our streets and our cities, as well as our villages, not just the urban areas, but even the tier 2, tier 3 cities, as well as villages, become safe, so that any person of either gender can step out and not be, intruded upon. Their privacy is not intruded upon, their photographs not taken, or attempts made to disturb them when they are on a walk. And you sometimes you'll find youngsters using bikes. In a group of bikers come, and then they try to follow young women. So it is not only individual stalkers, but you will have the mob mentality too. So the schools, colleges, universities need to, build this civic sense, so that the youngsters are deterred from ever attempting to try to stalk or to harass any women in any manner. I think these practical measures, and cooperating with the police in filing a complaint. Initially, you can give a CSR, what is called community service petition in Tamil Nadu. So it is not straight away an FIR. But then if you find that it is getting more and more serious, at any stage, that CSR can be turned into an FIR, and the accused can be apprehended, and he will face the wrath of the law. So with these, and our films and our magazines also have an influence.
Yeah.
And that, the movies try to project that a person who is stalking women are a kind of hero image. So the suggestion comes true, and it influences the psyche of youngsters. So that false projections in our media and films and literature should also be completely avoided.
Correct.
These are my suggestions on this important subject. Thank you.